The Denver Broncos are set to take on the Kansas City Chiefs for the first time this season in Week 10. And the Broncos, after finally snapping the losing streak against the Kansas City Chiefs last year, are looking to build a win streak of their own. So we're going to go ahead and preview this game, talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of this Chiefs roster, and how the Denver Broncos have their best chance at a win against this really tough opponent. Obviously, the last of the undefeated teams in the NFL. But before we do that, guys, I want to thank the affiliate partner for today's video, Green Gridiron Helmets. Use code DENSYN, DENSYN, link in the description down below to save off your first purchase on NFL team helmets just like this one, from little replicas to full-size helmets. Again, that is code DENSYN, link in the description down below to save off your first purchase. Thank you so much to Green Gridiron Helmets. And now back to your regularly scheduled content. The Broncos last Sunday lost to the Baltimore Ravens 41-10. They got their teeth kicked in by their own admission, and the Broncos are going to be going into Kansas City this week madder than a disturbed nest of hornets. They really are going to be in a position where they're going to be pissed off, man. After last week, they got embarrassed in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry basically did whatever they wanted to do at will versus this Broncos defense. Offensively, the Broncos kept the team in the game until the defense just had a complete meltdown before halftime, and then they let Baltimore score again before the Broncos got the ball in the second half. Between the time that the Broncos touched the ball the final time in the first half to their first time touching it in the second half, the score went from 17-10, should have been 17-14 if Garrett Bowles didn't have that holding call on Bo Nix's rushing touchdown. It then went to 31-10 by the time Denver touched the ball again. So I don't think it's very fair to evaluate the second half tape from the offense, but the first half tape from the offense was very good. The Broncos are in a position right now where they can atone for a really embarrassing performance against an opponent who they obviously know very well, and they're looking to be the team to hand the very first loss of the season to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been far from perfect this year despite their perfect record, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Patrick Mahomes and company, they haven't been that dynamic Chiefs offense that we're used to seeing. They have had some issues at times in terms of putting up points through the air, in terms of running the ball. But at the end of the day, they still find ways to win. Their defense is outstanding in a lot of statistical categories, and their defense has kept them in games. Most of their wins this season, I believe it's all but two, have been one-score games. So it's not like the Chiefs are steamrolling their opponents or anything like that. They've got to find tough, gritty ways to win football games every single week. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes isn't having the greatest statistical season, but I do think he is making the plays when it matters most for this Chiefs team. And last week, it was the second week of DeAndre Hopkins against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we saw the Kansas City Chiefs offense really start to look like their old self again. We saw them with explosive plays downfield. Travis Kelce had a big night. DeAndre Hopkins just brings another dynamic element to that offense, gives Mahomes a receiver that honestly he's never really had before in his career. So I don't know, man. This Chiefs offense, this is the time of year where they really start to light up and get scary. But let's go ahead and break down this Chiefs roster. But before we do that, I do want to talk about injuries heading into this game for both teams. For the Broncos, they're actually pretty clean in terms of injuries heading into this game. They only have two players listed as out on the injury report, and they are both guys who are in their 21-day activation window to come off of IR. And that's Delarian Turner-Yell and Drew Sanders. Luke Wattenberg is listed as questionable in this game. He is looking to return from his high ankle sprain, but Denver activated him off of injury reserve today, so that would indicate that Wattenberg is going to play and he's going to return as the starting center for the Broncos. As far as KC is concerned, they only have two players listed on their injury report with designations. Juju Smith-Schuster is out for this game with a hamstring injury. He's been been a little bit beat up this year. That was part of the reasoning why they went out and traded for DeAndre Hopkins, along with losing Rashee Rice for the season with a torn ACL. And then additionally, Tershawn Wharton, their big defensive tackle, is listed as questionable with a knee injury, but he did get a limited practice in on Friday, so I do believe that Wharton is going to play. Let's go ahead now and bring in this Chiefs roster, courtesy of our lads. Again, if you guys are not familiar with how we do these game preview videos, it's more of a video that's centric on the opponent, breaking down their strengths and weaknesses, how they could look to attack the Broncos, and in turn, how the Broncos could look to exploit some of their weaknesses. So starting off with this Chiefs offense, Andy Reid, he is the offensive mastermind, although Matt Nagy is actually the guy who's in the headset relaying the plays to Mahomes. I'm not exactly sure how the dynamic works, because you can clearly see that Nagy's the one that's talking to Mahomes, and is relaying the plays in, but Andy is still technically designated as the play caller, so I don't know if Andy picks a play, he tells Nagy the play, and then Mahomes gets that play from Nagy. I don't know, because I just think that's kind of a jumbled operation, but whatever floats their boat, it worked for them. And then defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, he is one of the best defensive coordinators in the business. He's one of those guys who you know is never going to get hired for a head coaching job again. I don't think Spagnuolo would want to be a head coach again. He's doing some awesome stuff in KC. He's been there since 2019, and ever since the Chiefs hired Steve Spagnuolo, their defense has just been amongst the top in the NFL, and it's only gotten better ever since they traded away Tyreek Hill and really made a movement to invest in their defense and invest in their offensive line. But we all know, despite all the other pieces on this Chiefs team, it all runs through number 15, Patrick Mahomes. And like I talked about this year, Patrick Mahomes statistically is not having a world beater season. Like, he's not going to win another MVP this year. There's no doubt about that. Even though he's in the race, he's not going to finish with the MVP based on these stats. 69.9% completion, 1,942 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 7 big-time throws, and 7 turnover-worthy plays, a 6.4 average depth of target per Pro Football Focus. Those final 3 stats came from PFF. So what that essentially means is Mahomes is doing a good job distributing the ball to his playmakers. He's not really pushing the ball downfield much this year. In fact, he has 6.0 air yards per attempt this year, which is 33rd out of 33 eligible quarterbacks. He is not throwing the ball deep. He is taking what the defense is giving him, which is pretty much everything underneath. However, Patrick Mahomes has struggled a little bit under pressure this year. He has a 17.0 pressure to sack percentage, which would be his career worst on the year. His highest previously was 13.4% in 2021. So he is getting pressured more and he is getting sacked more than at any point in his career. I did find that a little bit surprising and notable, considering that Denver's defense is so predicated on rushing the passer, generating pressure, and bringing blitzes. I think that is something that is very notable. However, Mahomes, despite kind of being this check down Charlie on the year, he's still 12th in the NFL in EPA per play, and he's 2nd in success rate this year. So really, he's doing a very good job of being efficient. He's just not putting the ball in harm's way. Only 7 turnover-worthy plays. That's on pace for a career low as well. So, again, he's really being almost like an Alex Smith game manager when you just look at the numbers. But again, on 3rd down, when you really need a play, you still see the same old Patrick Mahomes run around, till somebody gets open, throw across his body, make these insane circus plays. That's something Patrick Mahomes still has in his tool belt, but he's not really using it as a crutch. He's only bringing it out when he has to. Aside from that, he's really being more of a game manager on the season. despite the fact that he is struggling under pressure this year, teams are still afraid to blitz Patrick Mahomes. And understandably so, because he's a smart quarterback. He knows how to throw hot whenever you blitz. That means that he essentially is going to replace whoever the defense is rushing with a throw. That space is going to be vacated, and the receiver can just sit down in that space. Mahomes and his receivers are excellent being on the same page in terms of hot routes, so it's really hard to blitz Mahomes. Also, if he is able to get away and break a couple of tackles, then he can still, make plays happen that way out of structure as well. He's still Patrick Mahomes. But when he is blitzed, he is struggling. He's only been blitzed 22.3% of dropbacks this year, but 430 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1 big-time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. So he's not having elite-level production when he is blitzed, even though teams are afraid to blitz him. When he's not blitzed, 69.3% completion, 1,512 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 6 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. So he's actually putting the ball in harm's way a little bit more when he's not under pressure and when he's not blitzed as opposed to when he is blitzed. So I found that interesting. The best formula to beat Mahomes, of course, is going to be to generate pressure with a 4-man rush. The Chiefs have a really strong offensive line. It's going to be harder to generate pressure with a 4-man rush, but there are some one-on-one matchups I actually do like for the Denver Broncos. We'll talk about that in just a second. I'll go ahead and give one of them away now. It's going to be Nick Bonito versus their left tackle, Wanye Morris. If the Broncos can get some one-on-one matchups like that, then they can generate some pressure with a 4-man rush. That'll make things a lot easier, but I still anticipate Denver going back to their bread and butter, a lot more blitzing, a lot more single high coverage, stuff like that. I just think that the soft, squishy zone coverage we saw against Baltimore will not be making a reappearance against Kansas City, or at least, God, I hope so. As far as who Patrick Mahomes has to throw the football to, obviously Travis Kelce is going to be your number one target. He still is Mr. Reliable for the Chiefs, especially on third down. 52 catches, 435 yards, and a touchdown this year, but he has 24 catches for first downs. Again, he's very reliable on third down. Although athletically, yes, he's kind of lost a step, he still is one of the most smart tight ends in the NFL. He knows how to sit down in voids in the zone coverage. He used to play quarterback in high school and college, so he knows coverage, he knows the voids, he knows where to sit down, and he and Patrick Mahomes have such good chemistry that they always know where each other is going to be, and they always know where they are always on the same page as far as where Travis Kelce is going to be. So yeah, man, that's something that has not changed, even though Travis Kelce has kind of lost a step this year and doesn't look exactly like the same dominant force that he's always been. You still gotta account for Travis Kelce at all times because he is still the number one receiving threat there in Kansas City. But we talked about earlier how the Chiefs went out and added DeAndre Hopkins from the Tennessee Titans after losing Rashee Rice for the season. Juju Smith-Schuster's been banged up, and he's already making a big-time difference in this offense. He's got 10 catches for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is making a big-time impact already. He was phenomenal in that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pat Surtain is probably going to have to follow DeAndre Hopkins wherever he goes. And then as far as Kelce's concerned, I think that Denver might put a safety and a linebacker on him, or maybe a safety plus Jaquan McMillan on him. That was something that worked really well against Travis Kelce last year. Keep 2 guys on Travis Kelce at all times. But there are other guys as well in this Chiefs offense that you kind of have to account for that you didn't really have to account for last year. Xavier Worthy, the rookie out of Texas, literally ran the fastest 40 time in NFL history at the Combine. He's got 3 deep touchdowns on the year, 19 catches, 235 yards, so he can burn you deep. You've got to account for that at all times. The Chiefs haven't had a deep element like that in their offense since Tyreek Hill. Noah Gray, he's been effective kind of picking up some of the slack from Travis Kelce this year. 17 catches, 208 yards for him. Justin Watson, 13 catches, 171 yards. Our old friend Samaje Perine has 13 catches for 129 yards. So Patrick Mahomes is doing a really good job of spreading the ball around and making sure that he's not depending on just Travis Kelce or just DeAndre Hopkins now that he's there. He's, again, doing a great job of spreading the ball around. The Broncos are really going to have to take into account Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. You'll have to think about Worthy as well, but outside of that, you got Mecole Hardman, who's kind of a gadget player. He can certainly get the ball in various creative ways, and then we already talked about Justin Watson a little bit. He's somebody who can make some reliable catches for you on third down. This Chiefs weaponry core is, quite frankly, in some of the best shape that they've been in a long time. Noah Gray's making plays for them. Samaje Perine's making plays for them. So yeah, man, that's something that the Broncos are definitely going to have to account for. And it's kind of like Baltimore last week, where you've got a lot of different weapons that can beat you in a lot of different ways. As far as their run game is concerned, it definitely has taken a hit since Isaiah Pacheco broke his leg in week 2. They brought Kareem Hunt back, and he's been the starter for them throughout the majority of the season. 111 carries, 414 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. So he is getting some good volume in the red zone. He is scoring touchdowns, but he's not exactly a world beater on the ground. Under 4 yards per carry. Samaje Perine, as Broncos country knows, he's more of a pass catcher out of the backfield, more of a third down back than anything else. He's not really a 3 down back that you trust every single play. Then you've got Carson Steele, who actually does make some nice plays for them on the ground. He's got 44 carries for 149 yards. He does some of the dirty work for them. I really like Carson Steele, and I think that he's got a bright future. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's still flopping around there in Kansas City, the former first-round draft bust. But, yeah, man, he's still there, surprisingly enough, and occasionally he will receive the ball as well. As far as their offensive line is concerned, we already talked about how the Broncos could have a favorable matchup here with Wanya Morris, but we're also going to see strength on strength in this game with the Chiefs' interior offensive line versus the Broncos' interior defensive line. The Chiefs with Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith really have a brick wall on that interior, and we've seen Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, DJ Jones, Malcolm Roach. The Broncos' interior defensive line this year really has been fantastic, but they have a really tough matchup this week. We saw Zach Allen double-teamed like crazy. He wasn't really able to get much going in the Baltimore game. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City follows a similar matchup, and then they'll have one-on-one matchups with guys like John Franklin Myers, DJ Jones, and Malcolm Roach, and as much as I like all those guys for Denver, I think that Kansas City might actually have the leg up in this matchup because that interior offensive line is so good. Then you've got Jawan Taylor at right tackle, who, of course, generates a lot of controversy every single week for his quick get-off at the line of scrimmage. I think that he's getting off the ball about a half count early. It's really tough to officiate in real time, so you don't see him flagged too often for false starts, but he still does accumulate a lot of penalties, and I think that that's another area that the Broncos could look to attack. Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis, and now Dondre Tillman's going to get a bigger chance with Baron Browning out of the building. I think that the Chiefs' tackles are definitely the weak point on their offensive line. They have Kingsley Suamataia as well, who started the year at left tackle, but ended up getting benched a couple of games in for Wanya Morris. We'll see if at some point they want to maybe return back to Suamataia. their second round pick this year. But that's kind of the story with this Chiefs offense. We all know that it all goes through Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and now with DeAndre Hopkins there, that's just another weapon that you're going to have to account for. But as far as this Chiefs defense is concerned, they are really, really solid as far as stopping the pass, but they are excellent stopping the run. They are one of the better defenses in the NFL. They are certainly a dynamic unit that marries really well together. We already talked about how Steve Spagnuolo has this team gelling extremely well. And we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the main contributors here. Obviously, you've got George Karlaftis. He is your sack leader for the Kansas City Chiefs on the edge rush unit with 4. But the entire operation for this Chiefs defense, especially their defensive line, goes through Chris Jones. He's having yet another fantastic season. 3 sacks. He's a major contributor in the Chiefs having a top-tier run defense. They're second in rush yards allowed, second in yards per carry allowed, tied for third in rush touchdowns allowed, third in rush first downs allowed, fourth in rush success rate allowed. This Chiefs run defense is fantastic, and it all starts off with Chris Jones. You got Derek Nottie up there up front as well, Mike Purnell, Marlon Tuipulotu, and then on the edge rush unit, I almost forgot about Josh Uche, who they traded for from the New England Patriots, just trying to get some more production in terms of pressure and sacks, and I think this might be the week where we see Uche kind of turned loose a little bit more. They've also got Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the former first-round pick from last year, the Kansas City native. As far as some statistics for their pass defense is concerned, they are 8th in pass yards allowed, 16th in completion percentage allowed, tied for 9th in yards per attempt allowed, 11 pass touchdowns allowed, 5 interceptions. They're first in 20-plus yard pass plays allowed and 25th in drop-back success rate allowed. So the success rate, that actually would be indicative of the Broncos being able to maybe get some explosive plays here occasionally. Like, I don't think that the Broncos are going to have a field day offensively, but I do think that they're going to have the ability to get their own. As far as their linebacking unit is concerned, you've got Drew Tranquill as their weak side linebacker. You've got Nick Bolton as the Mike. He leads the team in tackles with 56. Tranquill with 45. With 45 there for Drew Tranquill. And then you've got Leo Chenal as your Sam linebacker. Jack Cochran, he is also a good player that gets rotated in there as well. As far as their cornerback unit is concerned, you got Najee Johnson, Trent McDuffie, he's one of the best. And then you've got Chamari Connor at nickel. Justin Reed and Brian Cook are your 2 safeties. Talking about special teams, Harrison Butker, he's been one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL for a very long time. And then Mecole Hardman, he's really good as a returner. And then they've got the punt god, Matt Araiza, there as the punter. This is going to be a tough matchup for the Denver Broncos. There is no doubt about it. But I also think that this Chiefs team is beatable. I think that they have shown that they are not perfect. They have avenues where teams have the opportunity to beat them. They just haven't capitalized. The other teams haven't. We look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week where they had the Chiefs on the ropes. They scored a touchdown, and if Todd Bowles had a pair of balls, he would have gone for 2 in that situation to try to win the game. We did see on Thursday Night Football that strategy not work out too well for the Bengals, but it's still good thought process. It certainly was going to be better than going to overtime where Patrick Mahomes just ripped your defense apart and scored and won the game before your team even had a chance to touch the ball. So if Denver gets in a similar situation like that, they damn well better go for 2. They cannot allow this game to go to overtime. You've got to win it in regulation. But in order to keep up with the Chiefs to make it a close game, you've got to get off to a fast start. Once again, man, no opening drive turnovers. For the love of God, we saw the Denver Broncos commit yet another opening drive turnover last week. The ball bounced off of little Jordan Humphrey's hands and landed into the hands of the Ravens defense for an interception. You cannot have crap like that happen early or just in general. I have it written in all caps here. Don't lose the turnover battle. If you lose the turnover battle, you are going to lose the game. Offensively, you start off with that ball. You use hurry up offense, use no huddle. It allows the team to get the defense on their toes. It allows the defense, or it doesn't allow the defense to sub. And more importantly, it gasses the defense. So that's something I'm a big proponent of, using the hurry up, using no huddle. Take what the defense gives you. If they give you an underneath pass as opposed to something deep downfield, take the underneath pass. Take it every time, man. You can't force anything into coverage against this defense, or they're going to make you pay for it. Offensively, you've got to stay committed to the ground game, even if it's not working against Chris Jones and company, because it'll help set up play action. And the Broncos, these last couple of weeks, have actually done a pretty good job setting up the play action. So you've got to stay committed to that. No stupid penalties. We say it every single week, especially of the pre-snap variety, and no holding calls from Garrett Bowles. That's something that killed the Broncos pretty massively, honestly, towards the end of the half, where it could have been 17-14. You were feeling a lot better. Instead, it ended up being 17-10. Your defense crapped the bed, and the next time you saw the ball, it was 31-10, and the game was over. So, no penalties. Don't beat yourself. You already have a tough opponent in the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't have another opponent in yourself trying to beat you. We already talked about the defensive strategy a little bit. Double team Travis Kelce with either like a linebacker, maybe Zach Cunningham or Justin Sternad or Jaquan McMillan, as well as a safety. I think that's a strategy that worked well for the Broncos against Kelce last year. You're going to have PS2 following D-Hop pretty much all games, so he's not going to be much of a factor in terms of defending Travis Kelce, but they have a plan defensively, the Broncos do, that they know works against Patrick Mahomes. So they're going to go into this game with confidence, having the upper hand against the Chiefs last time that they played them. And I think Denver, again, is going to go in there pissed off, madder than a nest full of hornets after what happened to them last week. And that is why I am picking the Denver Broncos for an upset victory this week, 21-20. I think that the Broncos will do what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should have done last week. They will go downfield on the final drive. They won't allow any time on the clock for Patrick Mahomes to go back and respond. They will score the touchdown, and then they will score the 2-point conversion to go ahead and win the game. So that is my prediction for this game. I think that the Denver Broncos are going to upset the Chiefs on the road at Arrowhead, and I have the Denver Broncos handing the Kansas City Chiefs their first loss of the season. But I am curious, Broncos country, how do you think this game is going to go? What is your prediction? Give me your score for this game in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are both free and easy ways to show your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.